Hi everyone and good afternoon. I'm Nathan Season, the coordinator of the FEU Career and Placement Office. Welcome to another round of PEP Talk, the Pre-Employment Preparation Talk webinar series. This is our 14th episode. PEP Talk is a regular virtual series designed to prepare the graduating students for employment by equipping them with the necessary knowledge through talks touching on various topics delivered by industry professionals and experts. And on your screens now, you can see our previous PEP Talk webinars. You may rewatch them on your most convenient time at the Career and Placement official Facebook page. Today's webinar is being live streamed via Microsoft Teams. We are also live via FEU and the C.A.P.O official Facebook pages. So to participate in our question and answer part later this afternoon, you may submit your comments and questions anytime at our conversation page, which can be found at the right side of your screen if you're using a desktop, or at the live Q&A tab if you're using a mobile phone or other portable device. For our viewers watching on Facebook, you may also post your questions on the comment section as well. As we kickstart our job seeking and internship journey, the resume is that one document that remains essential. Even before getting that schedule for interview, it is this paper that gets to be assessed by recruiters first. Therefore, it is a must to know how to create a winning one in order to immediately stand out from the rest of the other applicants. That is why in this episode, our topic is how to write a winning resume. So please stick with us until the end of the program because you will surely learn a lot. And by the way, I just would like to remind everyone to please make sure that your microphones are on mute, especially during the lecture proper to avoid causing any unnecessary noise. Thank you for your cooperation and enjoy the rest of the program. And now, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, may I call on the Director of the Career and Placement Office to give her opening remarks. Please let us all welcome Ms. Maria Carmencita Bevsuva Alfonso. Ma'am, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Our distinguished speaker, our Vice President, Mr. Joven Castro, our deans, faculty members, students, and co-employees, good afternoon, and thank you for taking a time out of your busy schedule today. Um, the recent academic year showed us a preview of how things will be even after the pandemic, where many might be able to cope with easily, some may endure hardships. As we shift to a new paradigm, adapting to this so-called new normal will largely depend on how prepared we are, especially our graduates. With this, the FEU Career and Placement, or C.A.P.O, has designed a series of webinars to give the students the basics of working and finding a job amidst the new normal. We have also prepared and migrated online all other CAPO activities designed to help prepare our graduates for the new world of work. Online mock interview with coaching last July, online exclusive recruitment last August, student exposure to industries this November, to name a few. We shall be posting all this in the official FEU social media sites and Canvas, so please check out our event posters and calendars. Let me show you a short video clip of CAPO's lineup of activities for the rest of the year. Video, please. For our episode titled How to Write a Winning Resume, we are grateful to be joined by representatives from Kalibrr, an IT company providing hiring solutions in Southeast Asia that revolutionized the way candidates find a career and companies hire talents. Since Calibr's mission is to connect companies with their next generation leaders, our speakers' valuable insights will be very helpful in preparing our dear students for their careers. We are indeed very lucky to have him today, as he will be able to share valuable information to our students, the basic know-how in the preparation for the world of work. CAPO believes that this topic should be discussed to prepare our graduates and give them proper, better perspective of the world they are facing, one that is no longer the same as it was a few months back. And while it is not going to be easy to sort out the challenges we are in, always remember our mantra, be brave, because Tamaraos have always been resilient to whatever comes their way. And now, without further ado, allow me to introduce our speaker. He is currently the Growth Lead of Kalibrr, a careers platform for over 3.8 million young professionals and more than 18,000 of the most innovative companies in Southeast Asia. He started his career as a public school teacher under a global nonprofit organization, then moved on to handle the employer brand of a leading business process outsourcing company in the Philippines. In his current role, he ensures that more companies are able to build winning teams and more job seekers are able to find their dream job. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to your screens Mr. AJ Avanez. Sir, thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
Good afternoon po. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. Let's move on to the slide. All right. So for today, I'm going to be hopefully sharing some very actionable insights and tips to help our audience find the right job, especially during these challenging times. Next slide, please. So just to give a bit more context about the tone and the talk for today, I'm AJ. I currently work at a technology startup called Kalibrr. And as you noticed, my career has been non-linear. So I'm a legal management graduate, then went to teaching, and then went to marketing and branding, and now I'm part of a technology startup. And this is one of the things that I hopefully impart to you today, that because of the ever-changing landscape that's been highlighted more because of this time, there are a lot of industries that have drastically changed. And so if maybe you're a business graduate right now and you're thinking, is there a business opportunity? Is there a management job that's available for me? Or do I need to look into something else? Then I'm here to help you for today. Next slide. Finding a job is a game of first impressions and perspective. This has been highlighted more now because everything from submitting your resume to even doing your interviews and even actually doing your job has gone online. And so for you to be able to land a job, you need to be able to build a great impression. And from our experience working with different companies and helping millions of job seekers, your impression comes from two things. One is your resume, and the other is how you do during your interview. And I'm going to be touching on both things today. Next slide. So first, we want to talk about what is the importance of a strong resume. Why do you need to build a good one? Well, first, again, because job seeking is a game of impressions, your resume is your first opportunity to make that good impression. When a recruiter browses through a resume, keep in mind that they're browsing through hundreds, if not thousands of resumes. And so a decision whether you're going to be interviewed or not is made within mere seconds. And so you need to make sure that your resume is built for those decisions. Third, it is your gateway to an interview. Regardless if you speak well, if you've rehearsed, if you practiced for an interview, you won't be able to get one if your resume is not created properly.
Right.
Next slide. I also want to quickly touch on what's not important. While there are a lot of things that we need to consider when making a resume, there are some things that we shouldn't necessarily focus on that much. The first one is design. Right now, probably because of a lot of platforms that have become free, like Canva, pirated versions of Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, a lot of resumes have more and more designs. But what we need to take note of is that design doesn't necessarily add to the attraction of a resume. And sometimes, especially if you're applying to a big company, a corporation, or enterprise, which uses artificial intelligence to filter through hundreds of resumes, a designed resume can actually bring you down more instead of adding more value. The second one is length. Sometimes we tend to try and compensate our resumes with length. We think that if a resume is 3 pages, 5 pages, then that says a lot about the quality of ourselves as job seekers. But that's not necessarily true. Again, I go back to what I mentioned a while ago. A decision whether you're going to be interviewed or not happens in mere seconds. A recruiter doesn't have the time to go through 5 pages of resumes. So keep it to one, at most 2 pages. Third are photos. This is a bit of a controversial topic because admittedly there are industries where putting in your own photo is needed. I guess this applies if you're applying to a customer facing job or something that requires physical assessment. But for general jobs, I prohibit or I would strongly advise against putting in your photo because it doesn't necessarily add value to your resume. The third one is using unnecessary words. Sometimes we want to appear smarter than we are by using the thesaurus and adding synonyms of simple words. When you're crafting your resume, it's best to stick with the simpler words because it's an easier read for recruiters. Next slide. Now, before we proceed to some common questions when you're creating a resume, I want to quickly touch on what are important things for you to create a winning resume. The first one is a proven template. And I know, especially for FEU students, you already have a resume template that's been provided by your career placement office, and that's great. That's already a great jump-off point that you can use so you won't have to start from scratch. The next one, it's important to note that every word matters. If you're creating a one-page document or a two-page document, everything in there matters. So don't waste the space with highfalutin words or non-relevant words. The last one is to make sure that you proofread your resume every time you create one, or even every time you submit your resume. Because you give a bad impression if, for example, I'm a recruiter and I see grammatical errors or typographical errors. It sends the message that you didn't prepare, that you didn't take the time to actually go through your resume and review it. And that says a lot about your potential as an employee. Next slide. Now I want to go through some very common resume questions that we encounter when we talk to different job seekers, regardless of experience. Next slide. So first one, since our audience right now are mostly composed of people who are about to graduate and those who just graduated, I think it's important to answer the question, how do I highlight my extracurricular activities in my resume? A good point to always remember is that when you're putting in your extracurricular activities, whether it's a leadership position or just a regular membership position, you should always start by highlighting what the impact of what you did is. Instead of just describing what your role is in the organization or in that project, talk about what happened. So for example, if you designed a poster, don't just tell me that you designed the poster. Maybe include information about how many people attended the webinar or the event because of the poster that you created or the social media post that you published in your organization's social media pages. Instead of maybe right now you might be doing online selling, maybe selling baked goods or whatnot. Instead of just telling me that you actually tried online selling, talk about how many customers you've handled, how many sales were generated from this online selling gig that you've tried. So just make sure that you highlight the impact instead of the description of what you've done. Next slide. Second one, how important are my grades and my resume? If you're a fresh grad, you might be more concerned about this. The golden rule here is if your grade weight average is great, maybe you're graduating as a cum laude, summa cum laude, or magna cum laude, or even a dean's lister, great, put it there. But if not, don't fret, and I suggest just removing it altogether. Because what you want to highlight in your resume are all the good things. By putting in a mediocre grade, you're actually pulling down the impression that you're building. Now, for more experienced professionals, grades are actually less important. So maybe you're 2, 3 years out of college, consider deprioritizing the grades or removing it altogether. Next slide. Third, how can I add more value to my resume? And this, I guess, is more actionable if you're on the fresh graduate or before graduation, because you still have technically one full school year to add more value to your resume. And how do you do that? Two things come to mind. One is get an internship, whether it's a required one or something that you do on your own. An internship adds so much value to your resume because it immediately tells me as a recruiter that one, you've actually tried out what it's like to be in an actual workplace, and two, it shows initiative. And again, when you're including your internship experience, make sure to highlight the impact of your of your internship responsibilities instead of just what you actually did. Another thing that can add more value to your resumes is by taking on concrete projects. Meaning, maybe you're an IT graduate, try to maybe create web pages for maybe have a relative who's doing online selling, or if you're a marketing graduate or a marketing student, try playing around social media, maybe create a page that people can go to, build a following, and again, highlight how much reach this social media page has created, how much traffic this website has gathered. And what you really want to show through these projects is that one, you're actually aware of how the skills you've learned in college actually apply to something that's being used in day-to-day life. But also it shows again that you have the initiative to actually figure out problems that you can apply your skills to. Next slide. Fourth, do I have to edit my resume per company or per position? As a fresh graduate or as someone who's just about to graduate, this might not be as relevant yet because there's just a few information that you can juggle around and move around when you're trying to create a tailor-fit resume. So if you can tweak parts of your resume depending on the position that you're applying to, do so. But if not, it's fine. I would suggest maybe just tailoring certain parts depending on the industry that you're applying to instead of doing it per company. So it's not as tedious for you. Next slide. So now I want to go through the resume template from FEU's Career Services Office. and maybe give a quick guide and a few reminders on how you can fill it out better. Next slide, please. So again, when you're dealing with resume templates, it's always important to note that these are guides. This meaning is not completely mandatory. So if you think that there are parts of the resume templates that you can omit or remove because it doesn't necessarily build that impression that you want to build, then that's fine. Use resume templates as a quick guide. So let's go through the resume template that we have on the screen very quickly. Again, just a very quick reminder, make sure that you use a professional sounding email when you indicate it in a resume. You might have, alternative emails that you created when you were a kid. Avoid those. Make it simple. So just first name and your last name would be great. Nationality might not be as needed unless it's required by the position that you're applying to. In terms of educational background, your degree, your college degree is very important. Your high school, not as much. Maybe if you're a fresh grad or if you're still in college, that's fine. But if you're already working and you're looking for a new opportunity, I'd suggest omitting your high school information altogether. When we talk about work experience, again, I want to highlight, use bullets. So the format here is good. So your job title, your department, your company name, and location. And then after this, when you highlight what you've done, make sure to do it in bullets. And be sure to always use the first bullet to highlight the most impactful thing that you've done in the company. Try to use numbers as much as you can. Maybe include statistics on how many sales you've generated, how many customers you've served, what improvements in revenue maybe, how many hires you've processed, how many, again, website traffic, how many app users you've generated. Make sure to put numbers, especially in your work experience. Honors and awards are good, but as you get older, try to remove some of them, especially if they're from your high school or from like very young in college. Affiliations are fine, but again, as you grow older, try to limit affiliations and just stick to nationwide or global organizations. If they're just a school-based organization, then that goes lower in terms of priority of what you can put. When we talk about immersions, trainings, or workshops, these are all good, but prioritize those that are either paid, that have a certification, or that actually have some sort of screening before you're allowed to attend that certain convention or training. What you want to do is to prioritize or put forward those trainings that are actually more credible, to build that great candidate impression. Next slide. Again, that follows similarly for seminars and conferences. Certifications are also good, but try to research and figure out if that certification is something that's globally recognized or at least recognized within the country. Because if it's not, then there's not much merit putting it here. Projects and research conducted, these are good, especially if your project was used outside of school or has actually generated maybe a customer base or users outside of the scope of the school year. Character references, 1 to 2 would be fine. As recruiters, we'd usually ask for additional references if we need them. So there's not a lot of need of putting so many character references all at once. Next slide. So now that we've gone through certain tips and insights on how to create a resume, and hopefully once you create a winning resume, now comes the next step. You're down for an interview. So what's next? What do you do? Next slide. So these are just, again, some very quick essentials that you need to keep in mind when you're preparing for your interview. This might be things that has been said a lot of times, but I can't stress enough how often I see fresh graduates and even interns who have not gone through these. So it's always good to note. One, research about the company. Some key things to figure out: what does the company do? What services or products does it offer? Also consider what the vision and the mission of the company is. You're doing this, one, to prepare for the interview, but also as you try to figure out if the company is also a right fit for you. Second, practice answering questions. While there are variations in terms of interviews across different companies, there are still questions that are commonly asked across the board. So it's good to have key points in mind so you don't start from scratch when you're answering these questions. Three, present your best self. Again, this is the only, or maybe the second point wherein you're able to actually build candidate impression in the mind of the recruiter, the hiring manager, or even a C-level executive. So make sure that you've prepared, you've dressed up, especially now since we're all working from home and everything's digital. Just at least try to wear a collared shirt when you're doing an interview. 4, list questions of your own. An interview is not just for the recruiter or the company to ask you questions. We actually appreciate if you have questions of your own, because that tells us that you actually did work and you're actually thinking about what kind of job you want to have. Some common questions that you can readily ask are: what kind of day-to-day activities are you expected to do as part of the position? What kind of environment the company has? What kind of leadership the company has? So again, these are things that you also use to figure out if this is the right job and the right company for you. And the last one, again, because of our current situation, always prepare backup internet. What you don't want to happen is that in the middle of your interview, you get disconnected because something happened to your internet and you don't have anything else. So a prepaid load or a mobile internet would suffice, but just make sure to always have a backup. Next slide. Now we're gonna proceed with common interview questions that I want to very quickly run everyone across. So next slide. First one, this is a very common question that's very typically asked of candidates. So recruiters often ask, tell me about yourself. Now, when you're asked this, we're not asking for your hobby, we're not asking for your family background or what you like to do on your free time. What we're asking here is, how relevant are your skills and experiences to the job that we need? And why do you think you're actually a good fit for the position and the company? Now, how you answer this as someone who might not have actual job experience yet is to go back to your research about the company. Mention the company's vision. Mention responsibilities indicated in the job description, and explain to the recruiter or to the hiring manager how those things actually align to yourself. It may be an example of something that you've done in school, maybe a project, or something that you've done in your extracurricular activities, or even something that points to your character or your working behavior. Again, just make sure to limit your response to those things, and be as brief and concise as possible. Next slide. A lot of candidates actually get tripped by this question. Um, Sorry, let's go to the next slide. A lot of candidates actually get tripped by this weakness question because one, a lot are not prepared, and then two, a lot actually point to weaknesses without mentioning how they can circumvent those weaknesses. So when you're thinking about how to answer this question, try to list down your actual weaknesses. Some might be things you've experienced, some are things that you might foresee. And then beside those weaknesses, list down the things that you can actually do to limit those weaknesses or remove them altogether. Next slide. Third one, again, this is similar to the first question, why are you a fit for the position? And when you're answering this question, again, tie in the job description with things that are in your resume that are related to your work experience, your school experience, or your extracurricular activities. Next slide. So that's about it. I hope I was able to give everyone very actionable, very practical tips and recommendations about how to create a winning resume, how to do well in your interview, and to hopefully build that strong candidate impression to land you your dream job.
Thank you very much, Sir AJ Avanez, for that very informative talk and very practical tips, by the way. We definitely learned a lot. So to our students, please post your questions as well at our Q&A tab again, and I'll be reading them one by one right now. So we're gonna move on to ask the questions that we have from our students. So our first question, Sir AJ, she asks, which one is better to submit in applying for a job? A CV or a resume? And I guess there is a difference between the two, right? I think CV is a lot longer, no? Resume is more tailor-fit. Which one is better to use?
Well, it's a good question in that it's good that you know the difference between a CV and a resume. And I guess answering that question very directly, it's good to do a CV because again, recruiters are making decisions in seconds. They don't have time to read through a lot. I guess a tangent answer to that is also for fresh grads or for people who are just about to graduate, there's not much difference in terms of your CV and resume because there's not a lot to put for now. The differentiation between CVs and resumes actually apply to more tenured, more experienced professionals.
Okay. And then another question is from an anonymous student. Is it okay to have a copy of my resume with me in the interview and glance through it? So okay lang ba na may kopya sila kapag nagpapa-interview?
Well, I think for sure it's always good to have copies of your own resume. I actually, at least during my time, always would bring at least 3 copies because one you give to the recruiter, sometimes the other one you give to the concierge or even to the guard, and one is a copy of your own. I would though highly recommend not glancing on your resume as much as possible because you want to show that you actually know everything that you've written down in your resume, and glancing there shows otherwise.
Another question. I'm a very active student. I attended a lot of activities in FEU. Do you think including all of those activities in my resume is a good decision, or should I just select the most important ones?
I'd go for selecting the most important ones. Again, it's good that you've been active. So it's a better problem when you're thinking about cutting down your resume versus thinking about what you can actually put because you didn't do a lot of things. But the problem with cutting down is prioritizing. So again, you have the liberty to figure out which is more important for that particular position and just putting that out. So maybe 2 to 3 would be good, and then limit it to that number.
Okay. Sir, this is from John Cruz and my name. Sir, how can you answer the interview question, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? I guess ito yung sa second part mo nun about interview.
Right. You know what? That question is meant to test your foresight as a candidate. Meaning, when recruiters or hiring managers are asking that, what they want to figure out is how sticky would you be if you become an employee? Because, of course, since recruiters spend a lot of time hiring, they don't want a candidate who's gonna leave after maybe 6 months or even a year. So you don't necessarily need to mention very concrete plans, but at least mention a vision. So for example, um, maybe I'll use a personal example. So when I was a fresh grad and I was asked that question, my answer would always circle around working for companies and organizations that create values or that bring value to society. I don't mention any particular position or any particular company, but I sort of mention that guidepost that is like guiding me to where I want to be 5 or 10 years from now. So similarly, think about it that way and frame your answer that way.
And then another question anonymously, does a prominence of a school have a bearing on a resume? I think this is true. I mean, ito yung umiikot na di ba pagka ibang school yung nakalagay, may bearing, no? So
Right. I think I'm going to be very honest in that there are unfortunately still companies who consider your school, particularly the what's known as the Big Four schools. But what we're seeing is that more and more companies are actually looking outside of these schools because they're recognizing that there are very talented, very high potential candidates that are available outside of these schools. So if you encounter a company that only goes for those quote unquote Big Four schools, then leave them be, it's their loss. But just move forward and apply to other companies because there's a lot who are looking for or who are not considering the school that you come from.
Okay, interesting. Okay, this is from Alfred Joseph. I guess I'll try to tweak the question. It goes as, I think he is a candidate for best thesis category. How does he utilize it? Do we need to put our thesis in our resume? Parang ganun na lang siguro.
I would maybe qualify the answer in that depending on what kind of thesis you did and how it's related to the job that you're applying for, yes, put it in. So for example, if maybe you're applying for, if your thesis is all about a business study or a business case and you're applying for a management trainee position, then yes, put it in, make sure to frame it to talk about what the insight is or what the impact is of that business proposal or business thesis. But say the thesis is all about, I don't know, maybe something about the social perspectives in society for something, and you're applying for a sales job. So unless you actually are able to make that connection, I suggest not putting it. But again, if you're able to find something there that you think can help get the job, then do so.
Okay. And then, when should one follow up, sir? In case they submitted a resume and they haven't heard from the recruiter yet, when should they follow up? After a week? After a month?
I'd give it a week. just to give recruiters enough time to actually go through the resume. Depending on how big the company is you're applying to, if it's a smaller company, I'd give it a week because more often than not, recruiters for smaller companies are generalists, meaning they also have other HR functions outside of recruitment. But if you're applying to a bigger company, I think you can make follow-ups maybe at 3 days, um, as early as 3 days, just to make sure that you can bump up and sort of nudge the recruiter. I'd caution though that we still see a lot of companies who actually don't give feedback to candidates on the process of their application. So don't be disheartened if you don't hear anything from recruiters. But at the same time, don't be tied up to just one job or to just one recruiter. If you don't hear from one recruiters, make sure that you have other options, other companies that you're also applying to.
Okay, thank you. And then for our last question, I think this is very important. For most of some of our students who haven't had a lot of extracurricular activities and experiences yet, and they are a fresh grad, how can they build up themselves in order to include a lot of good things in their resume? Since you said they have to build up themselves in the resume, on what things should they focus on starting now?
Right. So if you're a fresh grad, I think top of mind suggestions would be one, um, if you can, if you have the means, try to apply for internships, even if you're a fresh grad, even if it's an unpaid internship. And again, I qualify that with if you have the means. Just because, again, there's a lot of companies right now. We've seen an increase in companies looking for interns, and that will allow you to build up work experience um, more easily compared to a full-time job. In relation, there's also a lot of companies who are looking for part-timers. Also look into that because at this point, as a fresh graduate, what you want to do is to do things or get involved in things that actually show your potential as an employee. And becoming an intern, working as a part-timer can do that. The other thing is that if you have, again, the means to work for a company or position that doesn't necessarily pay well, but you think can provide you with very comprehensive work experience, then try that out. It doesn't hurt to actually do that because you think about it as an investment. You're actually putting in the work now for it to yield maybe 1, 2 years afterwards.
Okay, so invest on themselves now. Thank you very much, Sir AJ. And of course, thank you so much to all of our students who have given their questions. And I'm afraid we have run out of time. So our speakers spoke about how to make a resume which will help you to stand out from the rest of the other applicants. Remember, in order to successfully land a job, it is important that you make a good first impression. So your resume is that first opportunity for you to make such an impression, followed of course by an interview. For resume, remember to use a proven template as a guide. More than the design, what matters most is the content. Only include things that will highlight you as a potential employee. Write things that will add value to you. Include your internship experience as well. Of course, through a resume, you want to be selling yourself and your experiences, right? Moreover, our speaker also advised it is better to provide a tailor-fit resume depending on the position or company you're applying in. Once your resume gets selected, of course, prepare for the all-important interview. Part of that preparation is really getting to know yourself well and of course, knowing what you have written down in the resume. There you have it. That concludes our PEP Talk for today. And in behalf of the FEU Career and Placement Office, we would like to thank Mr. AJ Avanez of Kalibrr for his precious time, and of course, the Shanghai Syndicate Communication Services, our digital media partner, for helping us in this webinar. Also to our students, faculty members, and employees, thank you for joining us too. We do hope that you've learned a lot from our webinar today. And I would also like to announce that for November's 12, 19, and 26, Those are all Thursdays. The Career and Placement Office will have a series of online mock interview with coaching. This is an activity designed to train our students in handling job interviews for internship or actual employment through a workshop and simulation which aims to enhance communication skills and personality development. You will be coached by either a successful FEU alumni, faculty, and industry partners. Just remember that you need to prepare and submit your resume upon registration. So apply all the things that you've learned from our webinar to that, okay? And just check the FEU Career and Placement official Facebook page for the registration link. And as we end, may we invite everyone to join us in singing the FEU hymn.